Hey y'all, how y'all doing today? First of all, I am posting this video on Tuesday, but I am filming it on Monday, which is why I'm wearing the same clothes that I was wearing in my last video. I don't want y'all to think, you know, I didn't take a bath or whatever. Anyway, so today I'm sharing another exercise that appeared in the book that I've been talking about lately called Write It Down, Make It Happen. I did not bring it in here with me, but I do have my Write It Down, Make It Happen journal that I'm going to be referring to here in a minute. And this is an exercise that I sort of put my own spin on to make it a little bit more spiritual. I'm going to be talking to you about unblocking fear so that it motivates you rather than holds you back from doing what you really want to do. So I've told y'all in the past how I used to be a very negative thinker, and how whenever change was introduced in my life, I automatically assumed that it would have a negative impact on my life, that it would make things worse. And somewhere along the way, I don't know exactly where, my attitude about change changed. Now whenever change is introduced in my life, I automatically assume that it's going to make my life better in some way rather than worse. And that negative thinking really came from a place of fear, fear of the unknown. Fear has often held me back in my life, especially when I was younger. One thing is, I was afraid. I didn't get my driver's license until I was older. I think I was 21 or 22 when I got my driver's license. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm 47 years old now, and I'm not the world's greatest driver. I cannot remember the last time I parallel parked was probably when I tried out for my license. I would rather walk 3 miles than have to parallel park. I will only very occasionally back into our parking space because of fear of failing, fear of looking stupid if I don't do it right, fear of looking stupid if it takes me a lot of times to get it right, fear of someone watching me and judging me. And honestly, I've learned techniques to help me overcome that fear, but at the same time, if I can pull into a space so that when I go to leave, I don't have to back out, that's just more convenient. So a lot of times now I do it more out of convenience than out of fear. Anyway, so speaking of driving, me talking about not being a good driver, I drove here from South Carolina. I drove all the way across the country. No map, no navigation. I followed someone. I was in my car with his dog and some of our stuff. I followed him in his truck, and he was pulling the boat. And at one point, I lost him. And I don't mean I lost him for a few minutes. I lost him for 2 hours. And I had a track phone back then, and I had run out of minutes by then. I couldn't call him. I just kept driving and following the signs because I knew where we were ultimately going, and I didn't know what else to do. And ultimately, I found him again. But before I got an iPhone, I didn't go places if I didn't know how to get there or if I couldn't print a map. And having an iPhone and navigation was one way that helped me sort of overcome my fear. But that's science. I want to talk to you a little bit about, this is kind of science too, but about changing your thoughts in order to change the way you think about your fear. So the first thing I want to teach you is, I don't know where I learned this. I think it was on a talk show. Someone was talking about this, and they said, whenever you're afraid, you have these feelings of anxiety and fear and whatever, you can trick your brain. You can say, that's not fear I'm feeling, that's excitement. And so you trick yourself into thinking you're excited rather than you're afraid. And that helps you to move forward. The other thing I was thinking about is, I think I read it on Facebook. It was a story where this older woman was swimming, and she saw this girl wanting to, dive into the water, and the father or mother was trying to push her into doing it. And the girl's like, No, I'm scared. And the old woman went up to her and said something like, so, be afraid, but do it anyway. And that sort of became a mantra for me, where I acknowledge my fear, but I do it anyway. And then I tell myself, I'm not scared, I'm excited, you know? So, oops, getting to the exercise in this book. So, she talks about how one of the first exercises in the book was to write down a list of goals that you want to accomplish. And so she tells you to go back and read over your list of goals and think of one, was there one that really scared you more than others? And that's the one you're going to focus on in this writing exercise. And so she tells you to sit down and, without thinking about it, write out a list of your fears that relate to this goal. Now, my spin on that was, what I did was, I took a white candle and I anointed it with clarity oil, and I pulled out my clarity crystal. This is my clarity crystal. Don't you like it? It kind of reminds me of one of my ex's penis. I just like to hold it sometimes. But that's my clarity crystal. And so I held my clarity crystal and I lit my candle and I really took some deep breaths, because sometimes we're afraid of things, but we don't know why we're afraid of things, or we bury our fears and excuses, or we bury our fears because it's something that we just don't want to deal with and we don't want to acknowledge. And I knew that if I was going to do this exercise, I had to be honest with myself, and I had to look into some of the dark places in my mind to identify what I was really afraid of. So what I did was I lit that candle, I held my clarity crystal, I think I put a little bit of clarity oil on my head, and I took some deep breaths, and I just thought about my goal, and I tried to think about my fears from an outside, maybe third person perspective. And then I grabbed me a piece of paper and I just started writing without thinking. I wasn't worried about sentence structure, I wasn't worried about grammar. I just wrote it down so that I can go back later and edit it and rewrite it to be more clear. And so I'm going to share with you my list and how you can take your list and turn it into a motivator. So the best way for me to do this is tell you the first part, which is you're supposed to write down a list of your fears. And then the second part is, she doesn't use this word in the book, this is what I came up with. You're supposed to, for each fear, you're supposed to write a positive counter statement. And so you're going to take your fear and you're going to turn it upside down and turn it into a positive counter statement. Now, I'm going to allow myself to be vulnerable here. I'm going to read you each of my fears and one at a time, and I'm going to read you my counter statement, and this will give you an idea of what you're supposed to do. Okay, so first of all, my goal was to date more, to have more of an active social life, and enjoy more physical intimacy. I just want some attention from some guys, okay? And I identified 5 fears, and for each fear, I wrote a positive counter statement. So my first fear was that I will be rejected for being fat, older, or ugly. And so my positive counter statement for that was, men value what I have to offer and are drawn to me. Then my second fear was that I will try and fail. And my positive counter statement was, I am always successful in my dating efforts. My third fear was that I will meet someone and then change my mind. And my positive counter statement for that was, I am absolutely sure of what I want and never doubt myself. My fourth fear was that I will meet someone, get invested in the relationship, and then be ghosted. My positive counter statement for that was, the more men get to know me, the more they like me. And finally, my fifth fear was that I will be pressured to do what I don't want to do. And my positive counter statement for that was, men respect my boundaries, okay? So that was her exercise that she talked about, how you take your fear and you take it and you flip it and turn it into a positive counter statement. Now, what do you do with these things when you're done? So I'm going to tell you 2 things I did. The first thing was I turned to unblock or release my fears. I turned that into a ritual. So what I did was I took a black candle and I flipped it, meaning, let's pretend this is a candle. I cut the tip off of it, I turned it upside down, and I dug a new wick out of the bottom of it. So that's called flipping your candle or budding the candle. And burning a candle upside down is symbolic of sin, of banishing something, of sending it away. And I also, before I flip the candle, let me go and tell you, I'm going to pretend like this is a candle. I wrote my fear on the candle, and then I flipped it this way and I wrote my name. Then I cut the top off of it, turned it upside down, dug a new wick out of the bottom, right? And I set this candle in a holder, and I anointed that candle with banishing oil. And so I lit that candle in some incense, and I took out one of my little 3x5 cards, and I had my list from my journal, and I wrote my fears on this piece of paper, on this 3x5 card. I did it slowly and deliberately. I put all my fear and all my anxiety into into that piece of paper. And then when I was done, I just read over it one last time. I said goodbye to my fears, one at a time. Goodbye to the fear that I'm not good enough. Goodbye to the fear that I'm not worthy. Goodbye to the fear that I doubt myself. Goodbye to the fear that I will be abandoned. Goodbye to the fear that I won't be strong enough to maintain my boundaries, whatever it is. And then what I did was next was I took that card and I tore it up. I tore it up into as many small pieces as I could. And then one at a time, I took each of those pieces and I held it into the flame, burned it, and then I dropped it into a metal cauldron I have on my altar. And once again, I just said goodbye to all my fears. And as those little pieces of paper burned up, I just felt this burden of fear being lifted off of me so that it wasn't there anymore. And it helped me move forward. And so the next thing I did was, once that was done, I took another little 3x5 card and I wrote my positive counter statements on that card. This isn't the card, this is my example from a previous video I did on incorporating signatures into your spell work. But let's just pretend this is a card. So what I did was I wrote my positive counter statements on this card, and I could take that and I put it under a white candle on which I carved my name, and I addressed that with attraction oil because I wanted to attract all these positive things to me. And then when that candle burned out, I take this card and I carry it on me. I can put it in my wallet, put it in my bag. If I'm sitting there watching TV, I set it up where I can see it. I might put it on the refrigerator or over, I might put it on the mirror where I brush my teeth in the morning and comb my hair when it gets on, so that I see this. And then I carry it with me so that throughout the day I could pull it out and I could read over these statements like an affirmation. And it becomes ingrained in my consciousness to where I think it, and then after thinking it, I believe it, and when I believe it, I manifest it. So, that's my video on turning your fears into fortitude so that they don't hold you back, but they give you motivation for moving forward. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.